From Matthew chapter 16, verses 24 through 26. Matthew chapter 16, verses 24 through 26. Then Jesus said to his disciples, "If anyone desires to come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. For whoever desires to save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. For what profit is it to a man if he gains the whole world and loses his own soul? Or what will a man give in exchange for his soul?"
I came across a video of a bunch of sports footage, and it was athletes. Is basically athletes in different situations where they're celebrating too early. And I thought I'd tell you a few about them in order to explain my point. I think I shared this with some of you, but there was a guy who was it was obviously a track event, and he had it. He had first place, and he was even kind of, raising his arms kind of in victory. And at the last second, this guy crept in and took away first place. Another guy was he was so confident. There was the finish line, and there was nobody behind him, and he was just kind of weaving back and forth with his hands in the air and kind of getting his congratulations. And this guy came in, and he actually put his hand out to stop the other guy from passing him and taking it from him. There was a speed skater. He was kind of putting his arms up in the air, and guys zipped past him. Motorcyclist did that. In fact, he even did the kind of like victory, gesture, and it threw his balance off, and he wrecked. I mean, the finish line was right there. The most painful ones, there was a soccer goalie, and the guy tried to get the ball in, and he blocked the shot. But what he didn't know is once he blocked it, he walked away, and he's like, "I did it." But the ball was spinning in the air, and it caught the turf and rolled in after he was walking away victorious. These two are the most painful. There was a guy who had first place. He's a race car driver, and he's going around the track, had it nailed down. He was in first place, and he miscounted, and he pulled into the pit and celebrating, and his crew had to tell him, "You still got one more lap." And so he had to get back out there, and he came in 11th. There's another guy, he's done this a couple of times. He's a football player. I can't remember his name. Some guys will get towards the end zone, and it's just a done deal. So they'll do a little dive or kind of a celebration ahead of time. And he dove in and dropped the ball, and you could see it in slow motion. It fell just short of the end zone, and he's strutting around the end zone while this other guy picked it up and ran in for a touchdown the other way. So it's pretty painful to watch, but, you watch it time after, I guess it happens a lot. They had it. It was in the bag. Everything was just a done deal, and then they lost it. And so I got to thinking about this. It's been kind of on my mind because it's just so painful to watch. I don't know why I watch it, but some passages came to mind, and in a roundabout way, I want to tell you some things that I thought of. Let's look at Galatians 6:9 for starters. So you think about these situations, say, you know what, don't give up. That'd be a message you might tell them. Don't give up. Here's the finish line. It's just right there. Don't give up. Here's Galatians 6:9. Of course, these all parallel our situation very easily. Maybe these guys gave up. Galatians 6, verse 9. God tells us, "Let us not lose heart in doing good, for in due time we will reap if we do not grow weary." I bet you there are athletes who lose heart. I bet you there's been games or situations where like this is a no-win situation, and it might be good at halftime or whatever to say, "Hey, don't lose heart. Keep doing what you need to do." And of course, maybe we've been there. I mean, that's why this verse is here, is that there's going to be times when we lose heart. 2 Thessalonians 3:13. "But as for you, brethren, do not grow weary of doing good." In other words, don't get tired. I bet you there's athletes that get tired. The game's just going on, or maybe it's some kind of endurance situation, and it's just exhausting. And that might be an important message for us to use, keeping these people in mind. Don't give up. There's It's one thing to be a Christian for a day, maybe for 2 days, but for a lifetime, some people, it wears them out, I guess, and maybe they're trying to do it on their own. There are some things that go with that. But it's important for us to remember, don't give up. But then I also looked up, I got thinking, okay, well, maybe it's more about perseverance. So I looked up some verses about perseverance, just a couple here. Matthew 24:13. Because we know it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. So it's going to require you to persevere, to do the right thing today and the next day and the next. And Matthew 24:13 tells us, but the one who endures to the end, he will be saved. So it's all about getting to the end, to the finish line. It's not meant to be sporadic or a temporary thing. It's to the very, very end. So it's important for these athletes to keep going into the end. Here's Ephesians 6:18. Another similar idea. Ephesians 6:18. With all prayer and petition, pray at all times in the Spirit, and with this in view, be on the alert with all perseverance and petition for all the saints. I think these guys that I watched, if they'd been more alert as well as persevering, I think that would have helped. That would have helped them persevere to be like, oh yeah, I'm in this race. Oh yeah, I'm in this competition, and stay finely tuned in that regard. And here's Revelation 2, verse 3. Kind of ties in a couple ideas here in Revelation chapter 2, verse 3. And you have perseverance and have endured for my name's sake, and have not grown weary. So that kind of pulls in a couple ideas. There's at the very end, don't get tired, don't give up, don't, grow weary, but also the endurance thing. So remember to not give up and persevere. And notice there's a reason here, for my name's sake. So when you're competing, maybe that would have helped them. Remember your purpose. Remember, your purpose and the whole goal of this. One more group of passages here. It's important to excel. I think these athletes would have appreciated this, to do good and then do even better. I don't think anybody who really is passionate about anything is ever satisfied, where they just say, okay, that's as far as I want to go. Here's 1 Thessalonians 4:1. There's a couple of verses in chapter 4 of 1 Thessalonians. 1 Thessalonians 4:1. I never noticed these until relatively recently, and it's really stuck in my mind. 1 Thessalonians 4:1 says, finally then, brothers, we request and exhort you in the Lord Jesus that as you received from us instruction as to how you ought to walk and please God, just as you actually do walk, that you excel still more. He says, you're doing great, do better. Don't stop. Here's 1 Thessalonians 4:10, a little farther down. For indeed you do practice it toward all the brethren who are in all Macedonia, but we urge you, brethren, to excel still more. So, again, this idea of them competing and having the finish line right there, so that's great, but don't stop, don't level off. And I think that can make all the difference. Doing well is a good start, but to win, you have to excel. But the athletes I saw, I don't think they lost for these reasons that I presented. The reasons I just presented, I think, still stand true for us as Christians in our situation. But these guys that I saw in this footage, I don't think they lost because they were discouraged. I don't think they lost because they didn't endure, and I don't think they lost because they forgot to excel. I think they lost because they lost their focus, and they weren't focused on the finish line. I think they lost because they were selfish. The focus suddenly became to themselves. I think that was the common denominator for all the footage that I saw. Suddenly it was about them. The pre-celebration, I did this, I've done my job, and that focus shifted from the end, and the glory of the final product became look what I'm doing. And I think that's one thing I learned watching these people, is that selfishness is a disaster for us. That in our competition, all those things that I mentioned before could very well mean the end of us. But I think what really gets a lot of us is not necessarily getting braggy about ourselves, but losing our focus, that it's not about us, it's about his namesake. There's a very famous part of Revelation, and maybe sometime we'll probably end up talking about this in a class. One of us will probably address it. It's in Revelation 13. It's very famous. We talk about 666, and it's considered this magical evil number. And it's actually a very simple concept. From what I understand, 7 is represented completion. As you well know, if you pay attention to math, 6 is a little short of 7. And 3 times is kind of like saying yes, 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 or no, no, no. It's very emphatic, beginning, middle, and end. So to 777 would be the ultimate success story. It's the finish line. 666 is disaster. It's dropping short of the finish line. That's what that is. That's why it would represent such a horrible symbol to any Christian, is to do so well for so long and then fall short because of all the things that we've mentioned. It's a horrible failure right at the finish line. And I believe one of the easiest ways to do this, that this footage kind of helped drive home in my mind, is to let selfishness run your life. I think that's why Jesus is so adamant about fighting it, to take the focus off the goal and put it on you. And again, it's not about being braggy, look what I've done. It's just a matter of kind of falling into yourself, never really spending time beyond the things that you want or need, or really being aware that there's other people that need and want things. Matthew 16:24, one more time, if you read this with me. Very, very strong emphasis on this from Jesus. This is the deal if we want to follow him. Matthew 16:24, then Jesus said to his disciples, if anyone wishes to come after me, he must deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. For whoever wishes to save his life will lose it. But whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. You kind of have to lose yourself in the competition, so to speak. For what will it profit a man if he gains the whole world and forfeits his soul? Or what will a man give in exchange for his soul? It's important to remember once in a while that this is a race. It's something that we have to endure in. And you win by not letting yourself be discouraged, and by persevering, and by trying to do better and better to excel. But maybe most of all, you win by not being selfish. 1 Corinthians 9:25 seems to emphasize this very thing. Everyone who competes in the games exercises self-control in all things. They then do it to receive a perishable wreath, but we an imperishable. I think that's what happened, is they lost their control of self. Their self kind of surfaced, and that self destroyed the moment for them, and they lost it. It's about self-control, and that means denying yourself, and it means putting yourself last. And strangely enough, as a final thought, it's also the best way to be happy. That's why we're designed. The reason Jesus is saying deny yourself, put yourself last, because you'll be happier. That's what you're designed to be. Fighting selfishness is key to having a life that's really a life. But the first step is to turn it over to God. If you have not been baptized, or if there's something that's interfering with your relationship with God, one of the best things about being here together this afternoon is that you have help. And if there's anything that any of you need to help run this race, please make it known while we stand together and sing.
Hark the gentle voice of Jesus calling.